Hey guys, welcome back again to Netcode-Hub channel. I believe you're happy to see the next video, and I am also happy to have you here. In this video, do you know what we're going to talk about? It is the same e-commerce app that you have been building. This is actually the 8th video. And in this video, we are going to look at authentication, authorization, and refresh token support. So adding these to the .NET 8 Blazor WebAssembly e-commerce app. And this app, I call it as Online Phone Shop. You and I started this project together, and we are on the 8th section. So I believe you've watched other videos or other sessions, that is from the part 1 up to part 7. If you haven't watched any of them or you haven't watched all, please check the description, and you're going to have the links over there. You can do any of the following to support this channel. You can subscribe and also hit on the notification bell so you can receive updates as soon as I upload a new content or an update of this e-commerce series. You can also like this video by clicking on the thumbs up icon beneath this video. When you do that, it actually helps and pushes this video for other people to also see. You can also buy me a hot coffee, and in case you want to do that to support, you can do that from the link in the video description. So thank you in advance for selecting any of this, but you know what? I'm going to love you much for selecting all. I cannot proceed this video without telling those who do support me, who like my videos, who comment, who buy me coffee, that thank you so much. It is you that is why I'm able to make video like this. As usual, I'm going to make this video very simple and clear for you to get the concept in this. You know what? I do offer training sessions for people who are interested in .NET technologies. Talking about .NET technologies, you'll be asking yourself, what are the components involved? Blazor, that is a WebAssembly and a Blazor server for web app development. Learning of .NET MAUI and MAUI Blazor hybrid for mobile application development. And now .NET Web API for web services. So if you're interested in any of these, I have my email link in the video description. You can hook me up through it. So what I would say here is, don't skip this video. Stick around because it is something that you're going to love it at the end of the day. Okay, so just sit back, relax, and now let's start coding. So this is so far what we have been doing from part 1 up to part 7. We're able to create our header. We have our images, our carousel, our featured items. And now when you go to the product, we also have a list of products, and we have categories also created and added to it as well. So that's the categories that we have in here. And now within the category, we have a banner created, which randomly picks the data and now display as soon as the page refreshes or an invocation of method has been initialized. Now, if I click on any of this, we do not get data from the API because we retrieve it once and we've cached it. So we can retrieve from the cache variable that we have. We don't need to be calling the API unless we do an update or we do an addition of new product, making the performance fast and now increasing it as well. So we can see from the get all, we have all products, and currently this is the product that we have. And if I click on the Samsung, it just make a sort and now use only or display only the Samsung. Apple too, we have the same thing. Now as you can see, the banner keeps changing, popping up with different iPhones that I really want to suggest according with the price as well. So you can see if I click on Samsung, check up, I have that is the name here keeps changing, and as you can see, that is it. So it keeps suggesting maybe you like to create a separate table with a separate record for this. But here I'm just using the featured items. Okay, so maybe I know you are genius and you can do a whole lot of stuff, can do some modification to this. So as for that one, I leave it up to you, and I believe and I trust you that you can make it. Okay, so that's what we've done so far. Now this time we're going to add accounts. You can see from here, since we're using the Bootstrap header navbar here, we have this, and we're going to add login and log out to this. We're going to add authentication, you're going to add authorization, and also going to add refresh token support, so that as soon as your token expires, we can have a mechanism that's the default way to get you a new token without even your consent. Okay, and this is going to happen between the computer to computer communication. So you know what, the very first thing that you're going to do here is to change or to include a loader, a screen loader. See what I'm talking about. If I try to refresh this application, you can see it's going to load for data to get connected to an API, retrieve data. The communication must happen established before data will be retrieved, and then process it and then display. Now you can see, instead of just having the blank screen like this, we want to display some loader in there, so the user will know that, okay, there's a process going on, so I have to wait, and that is it. Now when you click on the home button to see what's going to happen, you can see if I refresh this, a connection must be created, established between the API and the client, and you can see all this must happen. And we want to even change, as you can see with this, you want to, the data is not available, but you can see we have these navigations, and we don't want to do that. Okay, you want this to get popped up as soon as the data is ready, and I believe you can do that, isn't it? So quickly, let's use like 5 minutes to finish this. We don't want to waste much time on this because we have a lot of things to do today. Okay, so we're going to run like a rabbit. Okay, so just by the way, now let's see. So I have this small one that I'm going to make. We go back to the index, you know, for Blazor WebAssembly. We can change the loading from the application itself. We go to the solution, and from this client section, I'm talking about the client project. You go to the where is it? Let's go to the www folder, and you can see we have this index. With this index, we have this by default, this what is loading SVG up to this. So we want to remove this and now paste in what we have. It's just a div of class called rectangular 1 up to 5. So we're going to have it in a style, right, using the CSS. Okay, so we have this, and the next thing to do here is going to have a CSS copied. And you know what, I'm going to put the CSS in solution. Now I go back to the CSS file, we have this app.css. So maybe in here, I'll go down here and I'll try to add a custom CSS style to it. Remember that this is a custom CSS style to the carousel. Now in here, let's have, there's a custom style to screen loader. So with this, Control K C, let me comment this. And now with this style, credit goes to Michael Washington. So this is just an interesting one, very simple one as well. So I'm going to just paste the CSS style in here. I'm not sure you're able to type everything, but you can just go through them, type them. If else, then check the, did I say if else? Okay, so if else statement, right? Okay, so if you know you can type all this, then don't worry, it will be on the repo, so you can just go in there and clone it, and that's all. You don't have to type everything. But as you can see, we're using this spinner rectangular 1 up to 5, as you can see, and we're using this keyframe to just set it in animation form. Okay, so that is what we are having in here. Very simple one. You can see that is it. Now let's save this, and when try to read the application, you're gonna have some simple display. That's gonna be the loading, and we're gonna scrap off that loading from 1 up to 100. Let's see. So I'm gonna run this. All right, so you can see this is what I'm looking at. Now this is what we have. You can see this is just a small loading, and that's what we are using to load our app. You can see we do not have that circular SVG file that starts from 0 up to 100, the default one. Now we are using this to load the application. So you can see that as soon as it finishes loading, we have the app being displayed in here. Okay, so that's the default loader. Now this site, we want to get this loaded. So what can we do so we can have that loading have an effect over this component or this component too? So what we can do is to create a component. So let's go in there and I'll create components. And you know what? You go to Solution Explorer. Now you can see from our pages folder, there's also one folder known as other pages. Let's open that and let's create one additional component. And that's what we're going to use to handle the loading aspect. Okay. Now in here, I'm going to pass the name as screen loading or loading page. Well, you can even put in your name there. Okay, that's the matter. Aside from that, we want to create a separate CSS class for this. So once you have this page created, you see that's the loading page. Right click on the same other pages folder. Let's click on add new item. This time we're going to create a CSS file. So we pass in here as style. Maybe you ask me, why can't we put it in the app.css, or will that won't take in effect? Okay, so let's see if that one is going to take effect. Now, with the same component that we have created, what we're going to do here is let's specify the div that we copied. I hope you remember this. Let me increase the size. So that's what we have now. Now, if I run this, nothing's going to happen now. Okay, so the second thing to do here is we're going to link this page into components. So if you have been following all the tutorials or the part that we have been doing, I mean you and I have been doing together, you don't want to check our solution, our application in such a way that we don't call the API all the time. Anytime the page loads, we don't call the API. We have a cache variable that we cache all the data in there. We call the API only when the cache variable is empty, is null. That is when the application is starting or addition or updating of a product has been occurred. Now, in that, we registered an action. Okay, this action gets invoked anytime an update has been occurred, data has been added, or there's an event, or there's another method called, or there's an operation set against. Okay, so when you check our product service, this is our interface. We have all this. And you can see we've cached all this in here. So in order to have the loading page also get work, we want to also include this is visible. So when this is being invoked, we can set this visible to true or false, so we can hide and show this loading page. Okay, so let's add it here. And now when you go back to, okay, it's asked me to rebuild it, but I'm not ready to build it, so let me close this up. Now let's go back to the solution. And now, since we have updated the interface for the product service, it means when you go to the client service, and on top here, you're going to have this red line under, and that's fine. So control period, we're going to include this implement interface, and that is what we have in here. So, we want to remove this so we can have it set and get. These are the accesses that we need, so we can set and now retrieve the value of this property that we have or we are creating. We save that. Okay, so we have it. How come you have it already? Okay, so you have our product service. We have this visible. It's visible. We come here and now here we set it to. So default, it does not have any default value for this. Okay, now as soon as I click on get all products, so here, since I click on get all products, first of all, I want to set this visible to true, because here process is going to be okay. So set this to true so you can have it loading. As soon as this product gets, you have this list here, get the product that it needs, and this invoked, we want to set this to false before this invoked, so that as soon as this invoked, this value can change and it can update the UI simultaneously. So let's have this set to false. That's for the get all product. Now aside from that, when you can see that from this featured product view, let's see what we can do to do same. We can just do same to that, because when we want to get data from the API, set is visible, and as soon as the data has been retrieved and now cached in there, please set this to false, because as I speak, the data will be having, the container will be having a list of records of products in it. So set this to false, invoke it so we can display all the products in there. That is what we need. Now this is a mother method of get product. You can see it is calling from an API. We pass in this parameter as a query string so we can retrieve based on the featured or not. Okay, we can do that. We did that in the 2 subsequent video past. Is it 2 or 3? You can check any of them. I think I explained it in that video. Okay, so we have this set and that is fine. All that we need to do is to go to our page and I'll try to include or use this component. So we go back to this pages folder, not other pages, this time our product pages, and I can see we have this home page. That is with the product list homepage links all these pages, so we can use them, we can control them in here, the view. So on top here, we can include maybe product service.visible. You know, this is a property that we created. So if it is visible, we want to display this loading page. But in case it is not, then you're going to say if else. So else, then we want to show this. Okay, so if it is visible, we display this. That is when the product is getting data from an API, please display loading page. And now when the data is ready, please the loading page to set to off, because an event which is the product list, product action is going to be invoked. As soon as invoke, this page has been subscribed to it. And as you can see, it has subscribed to the state change. As soon as the product service or product action is being invoked, this page gets re-rendered. Now when it is getting re-rendered, the value of this also gets changed. And we can hide this peacefully without any issue. That's what we are doing here. So in our main page, that's the product list page where we have our categories. As you can see from this categories, we have our banner, we have our product list page. We're going to have this loader to get loaded while the page prepares itself, getting connection with an API, communicating and organizing data to be displayed on the screen. When you check the front page too, there is a session that we can also implement the same. That is when the app loads initially. You can see we saw that we saw two navigations images, right? We want to hide them since the product to display are not ready. So in order to do that, you know, we're going to do the same. So just quickly grab this, grab what we have in here, and now quickly let's go back to the front page. And then that is actually the home page. When that app loads first, that is where it has to go. So you can see we have the front page in here. And now beneath the disposable, we're going to use the same thing, and we can close this up here. So when you check this, let's see, we have if it is visible, display this. But in case it is not, then we want to hide that. So let's save this. Let me open this. Hey, let me close that. Then let me open this again. Okay, so Control KD. Let's see. Okay. So I wanted to format too well. All right, so now we have this. Let's try to load the app and see what we have. In case they couldn't work, it means you have to add the CSS to it. And we're going to do that. If this couldn't use the CSS file in our CSS code or the style in the app.css file. So you can see that the app is now loading, and that is the default one that is loading. Now let's wait to see when it gets to the home page. We must also have the same indicator. And that's the loading page to display it while it gets connected with an API. As you can see from here, it gets connected to an API. So we have the displayed, but the featured product here, we did not include that. So we have this page, same. Okay, so we're going to also edit this. You can see this is ready. So, but we don't want to include loading here, right? We don't have two loading symbols or two loading indicators in here. No, we don't do that. We want the user to know that it is uniform, it is one. So we're going to use the same method to apply to this component, but instead of using the loading page component, we're going to skip that. It's going to be empty unless this page is ready. Let's quickly have a look on that. Then we can now jump up to our authentication system. So this can be found inside our projects. You go back to the solution explorer. Now in here, you can see we have, where is it? Do you see is a featured product? I get it. Now in here, we want to have something like this if it is false. Because you know, if the visible is true, that is where you want to display the component, the loading page. Here, if it is false, meaning the page is already loaded and communication has been established, so that is where we want to display this. So if it is false, then display this. So as I speak, when we run this, let's see the final one. So we can say goodbye to this and we can move on to what we're going to do. So it is loading. Now let's see. So this is the default one that it loads. You can even shape this to the middle if you want to do that, okay? As you can see, this is hidden. The feature is hidden. We have only one indicator, and this keeps loading until this section is ready. Communication has been established on an API. Data has been retrieved or received, and I'll try to process it and display it to the UI. That is where it's going to set you off. Here, you can see. And we're going to also have a pop-up with this. That's fine. You see, so we do not have any structure that get displayed while the page is not available. No, we don't do that. Hide them. When the page is ready, get them shown. And that is what it is doing. Yes, I believe you also achieved the same. Thank you and well done. Now let's quickly go to our authentication system, because that is what we want to focus in this video. This is just, by the way, is a pass-by message that I want to deliver to you. And I believe you love it. You can also implement a whole lot of loading screen if you want to. There are a lot of loading screen online that you can just go in there and search. Even with Bootstrap, it has a lot of loading indicators that you can also get them to use. I have a video done on loading screen too, so I'll put down the video description. If you want to have a separate or varieties of loading screens, you can go there and watch that video, and you're going to have access to them, and the source code also is available, so you can just go in there and grab them, integrate it, and fine, you can move on with yours. Okay, so what we're going to do here is an authentication, and I believe you know that here we're not going to use JWT. We want to use an access token. Now the access token is going to be a string that we are going to issue. This string does not contain any claim. As soon as a request is being sent from the client, it adds a token to the header. As soon as it gets to the API it's going to catch the header, retrieve the access token from the API, and now run some queries on the token, and now check if it's valid. The client has to keep them, add the access token to the header anytime they're going to make a request to a protected endpoint. Then aside from that, it keeps the reference token when the server returns a 401 as unauthorized, meaning the token has expired. Then the client has to resend the reference token so the server can use that reference token, check it in the database, and try to get a new reference token and an access token to the user. It returns to the client, and the client has to keep them, remove the old header, and I include a new header, and I try to make another request with this. And this must happen between the computer to computer. The user shouldn't have any idea. If the user doesn't open the network tab to see what is happening there, no, it is an out of bank area, so the user can see. What the user will see here is I click on the get data, and now I have my data. That's fine. So let's start with this. So in application, we're also going to handle with roles as well. So definitely we must have some roles for ourselves. And they are going to create two roles, administrator and now user. So if you log in, if you can buy item in our shop, you can add the item to cart. But as soon as you want to buy, you must log in. And for adding of categories, for adding of product, it is the administrator who has to do that. So two people in the row, administrator and now the user. But guess what? You can also customize it. You can even add multiple rows. When you have the concept, you can extend it to any role that you want. Okay, you can be adding a whole lot. So this is just a manual way of authentication. You're not using JWT. You're not using the default endpoint from the .NET 8 and API. We are creating our own stuff. Okay, so maybe with a step, you're going to understand what I'm going to use in the access token. So first thing is, let's go back. We have to create a model for our registration. So let's close all this since we are done with the loading. Now in solution, you can see we have this. Now I want to have a separation of consent. So if there's a model that I will never put them in the shared library because the client will not need them. It is limited to the server only. So definitely I have to put them in the server section. Okay. So you can see from the server, I have a folder called data. And then in the data here, I'm going to add new item. And it's going to be a class. And I'm going to say user account. With the user account, I'm going to have maybe 4 properties in this. And that is also going to handle user identity. We have ID, name, email, and password. That is fine. So I hope you have the same thing. The next thing we're going to do here is we're going to assign a user role. So this user role, that is what's going to handle what the user role related to the account. So let's also create one in there, and it must happen in the same data folder. You can create a separate folder and now add it. Okay, you can do that. You can customize the way that you want. Now user row. Now with this user row, I'm going to have 3 properties. You know, since I'm going to save to database, we must have an ID. So this ID has user ID and a row ID. So this is like a is a relationship that we are establishing. But this time I don't want to use the actual relationship. You want to use this. This is just a loose one. Okay. The first one we can use a cascaded one, but here we want to do our own stuff. So I think this okay. We have an ID, and this is going to be for primary key, and we are not actually into this. What we are into much here, it is a user ID and a row ID. So user ID 1 and a row ID 1. Row ID 1 means administrator. User ID 1 is netcode. So if I want to gather all the information, I pick the row ID and I go to the row table and I can grab the row name. So we have not created the row yet, and the row name here I'm going to create is going to be a system rows. So system rows, let's create one class for that quickly. We're going to have, I think, 2 properties. You can include the property, you can include more, but for now we're going to have system row. This time we're going to have the row ID and then the row name. The row ID here default is going to be for the primary key, and we have just the row name. This is what we have. Okay, now you have row ID and a row name. So these are the modules that we need for the authentication solution, and you can see we have them in here. The next thing here is we need a token information, because you're going to be saving. This is not a JWT. So, you know, JWT is a stateless. It means that the server or the code, the token must have everything that it needs for the server to authenticate it, to identify it. But this is going to be a stateful. So yeah, it means we have to catch in something, so we can be looping through, checking up here and there, moving up and down to make some checks before we can give go ahead to the client endpoint. So we say token information, and I say token info. Now with this token info, I'm going to have 5 or 6 properties. How many are they? There are 6, isn't it? Yeah. There's an ID here. You know, the ID automatically is a primary key, so we don't count this. Okay. It is not what we want. This for the database section. We have a user ID. So the specific user, I want to cache in the ID in here. You want to have the access token that's going to be issued to the user, and also the refresh token. Now the expiry date for the access token, and now also the created date. Normally we're not going to use the created date, but guess what? We just want to bring it up. So maybe later on, if you want to customize it based on this, you can retrieve the day that the token is being created, or try to do some stuff with it. Okay, do some magic with it. So you save it, and we are done with our token information. So we have these 3 models that we have created. Now the next thing to do here is, you know, since we're going to be using them in the database, we have to include them in the appdbcontext.cs class, and that's the data context class. So click go to solution, and then in here you have your appdb context, right? So here we're going to add them down here, and now I'm just going to copy them. So we need 4 tables. So you can see we have user accounts, system rows, user rows, and token info. We added 4 modules, and we have them set in here to create a respective database table with the various columns specified as the properties for us. Okay, we have the sets. Now the next thing we can do here is we can perform database migration, so it can create a table for us. So let's close this. We're going to build this application first, but this one I'm going to do, I want to change this section. So appdb app.json, and now here the demo shop db. So I'm going to say this YouTube shop db. So you can create a new table for us. Okay, let's build this project first. So right click, build solution. You can see that successful build, as you can see, 2 succeeded. So let's see. Now I'm going to data migration. I can just remove this because we're going to be doing it again. But guess what? The same database that you use, you can continue with this. Okay, here I want to just change it to a new one. Now with this, I'm going to add migration. So type in add-migration. and I give it a name as, whoa, what is happening? Okay, so add migration. Now the name is going to be first, so I'm going to pass in as first. This is going to build it, but since we built it already, it's going to make it super fast. And let's wait for it. After that, you're going to add database, update database to put the code here into an action by creating a table for us. Okay, so let's see, we have this, and no store type or specify for decimal property price. Yeah, thank you. We want to move on. So here you're going to say update dash database. Okay, so I believe we are doing the same. So now let's run this so we can generate or can create the whole table for us. Because we have system rows, token info for table, categories as a table. We have user account as table. And you can see we have the primary keys, and it is each here has its primary key as an ID. So that is what I was talking about. Okay, so this is what the database needs. It's not our business, but you know, we have to bring it there for it can be used. Now we have it is done. So we have a folder, a database created. If I refresh this, try to open or access my SQL Server Object Explorer, which can be found in the Views tab, and you can find it there. If I open my tax database, and because I have YouTube Shop DB, and that is it. Currently I have tables, 5 tables in all. I think so, or less. It is reloading the pages, so the table, so we can just wait for a few seconds and this will be done. Okay, but we can't wait because we don't have time to wait, so we can just move on. Later on we come back to check, and even that is it. So you see 2, 4, 6 those tables, you know, category, product, system, rows, token info, user account, and our user rows. So within each table there's no single item in it because you have not added anything yet. You'll do that soon, okay, trust me. Okay, so let's close this peacefully. We can close all of this because we are done using them. We don't need them for now. So close them so we can have screen here, empty space to work on. Now, when you click on Solution Explorer, you can now go to the server, and you can see we have this repositories. That is where we have our interfaces and our repository implementations. Now, within this, you can create a folder and put all the interfaces name and name it as contract or interfaces or etc. But you know, I don't want to create a lot of folders, so I want to just put them in one folder. So here, let's also add one interface, and this interface is going to be an interface here, and I'm going to say I use an account. I user account, that's an interface. In that, I'm going to have, let's say, do I need to create, let's have 4 methods in this, okay? But first of all, we're going to be using this. Let me copy this. Let's create this model in here. Later on, I'm going to show you the reason why we are creating this. Now, this post refresh token will be used by both the server and the API. Not the server, the API, the server and the client. So I suggest you put them in here. So where we have this, we can create a folder in the shared project and I name it as DTOs. That's a data transfer object used to transfer data from the server to the client, DTOs. So we can create this, and let me add one class in here. We're going to be adding 2 more classes for login and for user. But here we have post refresh token, which has only a single property. So we can create that, and we can specify this to only a single property. Don't worry if you don't understand this for now. Don't worry, I'll get them explained to you. Make it as public. That is what we want. Now the next question is, did we even check if the classes that we injected or we created have this public class or internal? So we can just quickly go back to user rows. It says public, token public, system rows public, and system that is fine. Okay, so we have this, and when we go back to this interface, we have what to have in our 4 methods. Now the 4 methods, one's gonna be login. You're going to have registration, you're going to have get user by token, and you're going to have get refresh token. I want us to do all in one. Okay, so we won't waste time. So you can see we have our register, login, and our get user by token. We have refresh token. Now service response, we have login response. But here we're not having the login response from this class. Solution, we have our responses in the shared folder. Click on service responses, and you can see we have only this. Let's update it and add more. So here I'm going to say it's equal to null. So I want to set a default property for that. Now I can just make a copy of this, and with this I'm going to say not service, rather it's going to be what? Login. That's right. So login response, and now with this login response, I believe it must have some property that we're going to be using. So login response, we must have maybe a message, you must have token, and also refresh token. So maybe what I'm going to do here is I can just copy this and replace the whole thing in here. Okay, so maybe be asking yourself, why did we not specify a property like what we did in the, where is it? In this token info and etc. like this. Okay, here we can use this record, and it gives us the access to do this. So it set a primary constructor for this that we can specify the property or the values automatically as soon as we create this, instead of creating an instance and now passing in the assigning the property here to its value. We can pass in the value automatically, and it's going to in a smart way. Okay, bound to each. Okay, so that's what we need to do now. A very simple one. Okay, so there's no get or set accesses. Defaultly it is there, but it is hidden. Let me put it in that way. It is hidden. You cannot see it for now, but it's still going to work. So we have a message, we have a token, we have a refresh token. You can see we have all default. They are set to null. So default is set to null. Okay, now let's go back to our user account, and we can now use this. But there's one guy here as user session. What is user session? That's what we're going to use to populate our data for token generation. Okay, and for also getting user details. So we have to also create this user session to our project. The question is, where are you going to keep it? Is it from the server, from the API? Not the server, the API, the server, the client, and on the shared library, which one? Let's put it in the shared folder because it's still going to be used by both. So here we have a DTO, right click on the DTO, let's click on add a new class, and now here you're going to say user session. User session is going to have the claim that we need. So maybe you can just name it as claims, or yeah, so claims should be fine, and user session also be fine. So here we're going to have three properties: name, email, and row. So that's what you're going to be sending to the client. Okay, you want to send the person's name, the person's email, the person's row. Maybe in case you want anything that you want to add, you can add one property to this and now assign it in there. Okay. When you go back and check our user interface, you see we have all these sorts. But there's one guy here, these two guys, user DTO and now the login DTO. So that's what we're going to be using to transport data from the client section. If the client tries to register or login, that's what we need. So in the DTO, let's right click on add a new model, and you're going to say user DTO. You must have the 4 properties that we specify in the user account, and also you must add one property to it. And do you know that one property that we're going to be adding? Let's say you want to add confirm password, so the user can confirm the password. So we're going to make it this as public as you know, and I believe you've done this already, and good job. So here, let's go to the next one, and we need just an ID. Okay, we need our name, email, and our password. Now we have this confirm password added to this. So here you can see we have the data specified, data type.password. We have the password specified, and you can see we have an email specified attribute here, and we have a required attribute also specified on top. And that is what we need to handle this. So control period, we can clear and remove all unnecessary users to make this very simple for us. Now we have this. What else do you think we're going to do? Guess what? Yes, I heard you say login DTO, and that's right. So let's go in there and now create a login DTO. So I click on the same DTOs folder, click on add and a new class, and it's going to be login DTO. And you know, yeah, how many properties do we need? Are you saying 2? Yes, it is. We need 2 properties, and these are what? The email and password. That's correct. So we have our public. We have our email and password attached to this. Control period, we can remove unnecessary users because we don't need them. And here, control period, we can include the component model.data annotations to set this attribute on top. That's fine. So all these are required. You cannot pass in this model and I try to pass in null property in it. No, it will never happen. You're going to have an error. So we have these models created. Now, when we navigate back to the iUser account, see what happened. Yeah, it's fine. Everything is working as expected and it's intact. If you don't understand the last 2 properties or the last 2 interfaces, don't worry. focus on the first and the second one. The second, third, and the fourth one here is going to explain itself to you. Okay, so relax. Let's work on the first one and now the second one. Okay, so I'm going to remove this, the space here, and we need to create our repository for this. So it's going to be user account repository. Let me just grab this. Let's go to the solution, and in here where we have this repository, let's right click, take note directly in the server, and this time I'm going to be a class, and I'm going to use the account repository. So this is what you want to do. It's a class type, so take note. Now after having this, it has to inherit from the iAccount repository, isn't it? So quickly we do that from here, and it is inheriting from this. So this control period, we can implement all the interfaces. Take note, we have these interfaces in there, and that's what we need to implement. Control period, control plus dot, going to give you that. Now in C# version of 12, it has introduced this. I keep saying because maybe this is the first time you watching a video from Netcode-Hub and you might not know. I'm telling you today, so that is all. Okay, C# version 12 has introduced primary constructor. So all the services that you need, you want to make it available in the whole body section, put it in the primary constructor. So write less code and efficient use. Okay, powerful performance. Yeah, efficient use and powerful performance. So here we're going to be using our appdb contest. So passing here as appdb contest. This is a contest. I think so. There's a contest class that I create. I'm going to say appdb contest. Oh, no, let me do it again. So yes, and I need this. So this control period, we need to add a namespace to the section in here, and we have that control period KD. It has formatted. Okay, so this is what we need. So instead of creating it and initializing the field and doing a whole lot of code, you can do this just on one line or a piece of line. Okay, half piece of line, and you are way through. Okay, so you want to focus. You don't want to focus on get refresh token, get user token. No, you want to have first with the registration. If I click on registration, what should happen? Let's save this first. So first you want to check if user has already registered. So I'm going to use this. So that first or default, you want to check the email to lower, and I will compare if user is already there. This must be an async. If it is there, that is, if user is not now, then return user already registered. But if in case user is not there, okay, user is now, then this is what you're going to do. We're going to be using appdb content or save changes numerous times. So you know, in doing that, we can cache we can create one method to handle that, so we can be calling. Remember that in programming or in creating, developing, always remember to follow the instruction or the rule of drawing. Do not repeat yourself. Do not repeat yourself. So if there's a way out, please try to find that way out, and now have it one code which you can use them often. Do not repeat yourself. So we have this, and that's a commit. So appdb content.save changes async, and that's what this method is going to do. Anytime that you call this, it's going to save the changes. Okay. So here we check if the user is not null, it means user is already there. But what if in case the user is null? Then the next thing to do here is we want to prepare user account. Remember that here we have user, so we want to add this user account. You know, this user account here is a data table that we have. We want to create a section or a record for this user. So you know, we're going to add this, and on the password we want to encrypt it. So we are using this package bencrypt.net.bencrypt.hash password. We pass in the string password, and it's going to encrypt it. So if you can use this, you have to install bencrypt.net control period. Let's see if you're going to have access to, and not this one, not this one. So it means you have to include it ourselves. So quickly, let's go back to solution. Go back. We can just copy this bencrypt.net and go to solution explorer. Right click on dependencies, not dependencies, yeah, dependencies, to the server section, and I click on manage NuGet packages. So let's make a search out of it, and that is a b.net. So that is this one. So we need to install this package to the server. Take note, not the client. So that is this one by Chris, and that is stable version 4.0.3. So install this peacefully, and we can now move on with this. Apply, and okay, so it is done. You go back in there, and now you can see from the control period we have to include the namespace of this, and hopefully, where's the namespace? I'm not sure it is done, right? So let's quickly check. Install. Okay, it did not install. Let's find out. So apply. So do we need to return this before this can be saved? Whoa. So throw this not implemented exception. Throw it here. Okay. Now try to get it installed again. Okay, so it's done. So in here you can see we have it set. We can just remove what we copied earlier on. So here, this is going to save the data to database. In order to get the ID of it, we have to append .entity to it, so we can retrieve the ID, the already saved data, the currently saved data. Okay, append this .entity to grab the ID in here. After grabbing the ID, when we save any record database, you have to call in update appdb content.save changes async, and that's what we committed. So that's very simple thing that we are doing. Aside from this, we are going to check. Let's assign rows. So let's check if there's admin already there. In application, the first person to register is the admin. So we're going to check if we check system rows.name.lower equal to admin. We want to check if admin is there. So when we check and admin is null, then this is what we want to do. You want to create an admin and now add a current user to an admin row. So if admin is null, then please do add a new row as an admin. Get the entity, as you know, I've explained this earlier on, so save it, and now with the user row, add the row ID and also the user ID. So we are creating a relationship between them. Save it in here, and now save it. Okay, but what if in case the person admin row has been created? It means that there's a first person registered. Now the second person has to be assigned to a default created row as what user, because you want to handle 2 rows now. You can add more than that in here, or maybe later on you can manage user and you can be adding more, deleting and updating user information in there. Okay, so else, that's what we're going to do. You want to check if user is there. If not, then we create it and now add a current user to it. So we're going to check. We are making a check. Let me just put this in a new line like that. We are checking if the user is already there. Okay. If the person, we have this row ID to 0, that's the row ID defaultly. Now we are checking if this user created is null, that's this one. Meaning the user is not created, then we are going to add a new row as name. We cache in the entity so we can retrieve the ID. Then we assign this row ID here to this cache in, that's the user record added. We want to get its ID here. So we assign it to this one. And aside from that, we are now going to add the user row to the user row table by adding or grabbing the row ID and now the current row which has been created, or the user ID and then the row ID as well. So that's what we are doing here. Now if we are using this ternary operator to check. We're checking that here default row ID is 0. We want to check if this user row has been created or not. If it is the first time of being created, they're going to have this row ID set to the current ID of this. But in case it has been created already, then it's going to skip this. And when it skips it, it's going to have row ID of 0. So we are checking if equal to 0, it means that's a new creation. No, that's the old that's been created already. But in case it is not, then it's a new creation. And in such case, we want to return the row ID. We set the user ID in here and I will commit it by saving it. So by doing so, we're going to have our 2 rows created with anybody that tries to sign up with the application. So I believe you've gotten the idea behind it, right? Yes, that's good. Now at the end, we want to return an account created. That's going to be a service response. So after saving this, then do return this, because At the end of this, either an admin is going to be created or a user is going to be created. Then at the end, we want to return this. So what we are having here is administrator is going to be created once, and aside from that, no one can have access to it again. So the first person who's going to register is going to be assigned to an administrator automatically. Aside from that, the subsequent ones are going to be assigned to a user role, because that's what we are checking first. We see if there's a section or a field in that row, system rows, which has a section name of ID. If it is there, then we want to skip it. We'll come to this. But in case it is not there, then we want to create it. So after creating, anytime the system checks, it will be available. So no creation anymore. It's going to skip it. All right, so we have this set. Now, what of the login? Quickly, let's do the login. Or do you want us to try this account first? Yes, we can. We can do that. Let's try that and see. Oh, we have not created our controller. So this is going to run, but we don't have access to the controller yet because we haven't created it. So let's go to Solution Explorer. Now you see we have our controller folder. Let's expand it, and we're going to create one controller, and the name is going to be an account controller. So right click, then add a new controller in here. Since it is running, that's why we can see this. It is blur. So we have to stop this, and let's wait so we can stop it, and I'll move on with that. So I've closed it up, and now let's quickly go there, and I'll try to create our controller in here. So that is it. Add a new controller, and the name here, do you remember, it's an account controller. But maybe you can decide to name it anything that you want. You can even put in your name. Make sure it's an API empty one, and we see account controller. Let's click on this. Now inside this account controller, you know, we are still going to use the new way, and that is a primary constructor. So let's pass it in here. And I think we need to include our iUser account, and that is the interface that we created. Let's include it in here. And the first method I'm going to do here, that's the registration. So registration, you're going to have an endpoint as register. So that is it. You have there's a route as register, and you know we are returning an action result of service response, which has a Boolean expression, and also it has a message property. If I right click on this and I pick this, you know, pip definition, let's see what's going to happen. If I pick it, you can see we have this service response which contains a flag and now a message, right? So that's going to return to the user. Okay, so in case it is not to then return this, model is not, but you can customize it and now return some meaningful message instead of using this. This is just for a testing purpose, okay? And I will call this account service.register. So this is going to create the person account and also going to assign a role to the person if an admin or a user is going to do that. So quickly, let's run this, but we have to do the one thing after this. We have to create dependency injection in this before we can run this. So quickly, program.cs file, and in here we can make a duplicate of this like this, and we're going to say I use an account. So I user account, and here is an account repository, right? So account repository or user account repository. Yes. Now we are good to go. So the app is running, and this is what I want us to do. We are not done with the UI, so we navigate to the Swagger. So we can have access to the endpoint, and I'll test the registration and see if we're going to have access to the service response, which is success, account created. So we have this, and our email is this, our password is right here. This is our password, and everything is working. Click on execute this, and let's see the response in here. Yeah, that's fine. You can see we have an account created, and now this account here, defaultly, this user here is going to be assigned to an administrator because that's the first person to register. Now let's add user 1 to this, and now let's try to also register this. We're going to have the same thing, account created, right? So you can register multiple accounts in here, but when we check this from our object, right click on this system rows, let's open view. Let's open token information. Okay, so token information is empty now because we have not created any token yet. Click on view data. for user account and a user row, right click, and I click on view data. Now let's go through and see. So you can see from here that user ID 1, row ID, it is what? 1. User row, user ID 2, row ID 2, meaning 1 for admin, 1 for user. Check the account here, and you can see we have ID 1, that's the user. The first person registered is assigned automatically as what? ID 1 to row ID 1. Check system rows, ID 1 is what? Admin. So the first person created assigned to admin, the second one assigned to what? User. User controller, you can see we have the ID 2 here is for the user 1 in here. When you check the rows here, ID user 2 from row 2. Check the rows, row 1 is admin, row 2 is user. If we want us to add another one, it's going to be assigned to a user, not admin. So let's say user 2, click on execute, and now let's go back again, refresh the table, and now check it out. So if I, from the rows, it's going to be the same because you have 2 rows in here. If I click on this account, I'm going to have 3 accounts in now for user 2. Check the rows, I'm going to have 2 repeated twice, you can see. So row ID 2 is going to have this. So it means only one person has been assigned as admin. The rest are going to be assigned by what? Rows. Not is it rows? User row. That is it. Okay, so we have this working perfectly. Now let's go back to the login and try to finish it quickly, so we can push the next video on how to consume this into a Blazor WebAssembly project and a whole lot of stuff. So quickly, let's go back to this using account, and here we're going to specify the login. So let me just comment this, and now from this login, I can just close this, save this. So here we can check if this is null, we can return model is empty, and that's the same thing that we did for this response. Even here we did not, so we can include same. So if this model is empty, here we are returning a service response, so it is not a login response, and we say false model is empty, we can do same in here. But since we're going to use data annotations like data, we don't need to use this, because definitely this will not be null. But well, it's good that you prepare yourself and keep it. Maybe in the next future, if something happens, you know how to deal with, isn't it? Preparation is very important, so let's put it in there. This must be an async. That is why we have this issue here. So make this as an async, and this is going to be saved. Yes, so that is it. Now, if this is not null, it has data, what are you going to do? We want to check and find user. So is user in a database? Get from the user account first or default. Is user found in there equal to the, you're going to use the email. Is the person there? If the person is not there, return user not found. But in case the person is there, then what is the next thing to do? We want to verify the password. That means here we are checking the email, and we have to also check the password. We don't want system to check only email and now send a person in. No, we want to also verify the password. And we're going to use also the same bcrypt.net, and here we're using this verify password. And now we need to specify this raw password, and now we need to specify the hash password. We got the hash password from making a query from database, and now we can complete or compare the hash password in here, and that's going to return true. So we are negating it, and now we are saying if it is false, return invalid username or password. If it is false, if password did not match, return this. It is not advisable to return invalid password. If it's a third person who is trying to log into the account, it's going to know that yes, I have a working email, so now let me try the password again and again and again. But as soon as you display invalid username or password, be confused which one. So is the email correct or the password is incorrect? Is the password correct or the username is incorrect? Then reset confusion. Okay, so that's fine. Now we're doing that, and here, but in case everything is working, then we want to generate tokens. So here I created as one token, one method to handle the 2 tokens. Okay, so you can see we have an access token, we have a refresh token. It's the same method that we're going to create. Now, where from this method we have to add or update this token. But before that, let's have a definition for this token. So we want to create this token down here. And now with this token, it's going to accept. So let me see, it's going to accept just a single line. Okay, a single line. We're going to handle that using this. Let me put it down here. Okay, I believe this is going to make it simple for you to read. So we are using this random number generator, and it is coming from that is If you check here, it's coming from this cryptography. Yes, security.cryptography, and that's where it's coming from. And you can see we are converting this to be 64 string. We want to get the number of bytes. So here for access token, the byte is going to be 256, and for our refresh token, it's going to be 64 bytes. Okay, so we're going to specify it. Anytime I want to create an instance of this, we want to get the value from this, you have to specify in the token byte that we need. Okay, so we save this peacefully, and we can now check it out. So no, let's edit because you're not done. So this generate token here is going to be a subsidiary of a giant one method, and this method, that's the method that I'm going to put on here. So this method, we're going to say private async task, and you can say returning an access token as a string, and it's returning a refresh token as string. So it's returning two strings in here, and I will say generate tokens. You can see generate tokens, so it's a plural form, isn't it? Now here we create an access token by getting the generate tokens, and you know this method is calling what? This is a method. We pass in a number of bytes in here, and here we need 256 for the access token. We need 64 for the refresh token. Then here we are going to verify token, because I was thinking about, I tried to figure out and see, would there be an instance whereby this token could be, we could have same token in one database, because you know these tokens are going to be kept saving there, and now one token for one user. So what if in case this token tries to get the same token maybe the next sometime, and now we have the same token generated? I do not know whether it uses time to generate the token. It uses the time, milliseconds and nanoseconds and all this stuff. If so, then we can have a different token altogether. But well, I don't know. So maybe later on I'll try to find out that, and in the next subsequent video or the project, maybe I might have a better solution to this. But for now, I'm trying to check after the token has been generated. I'm trying to check from the database and I'll see if it is not there already. Then we want to add it. But in case it is there, then call that method again to get that token regenerated. And I'm just using this while loop. So you can see we have this method as verify token. So this verification token has to get access to database, make some magic, and now check if the data or the token is not there and return something in there. Okay, so what are you returning? We want to have this simple method on top, because it is also sitting on top of this, or I should say beneath. So let me put it here. Now when you check this, you see, so first by default, you come on the next line, and this will come on the next line too. Now when you check this, you can see that this is a verified token. Is returning just a Boolean expression, either true or false. Here, it accepting refresh token can be null, and access token can also be null. Now the second, we create a token object as token info. Then we are checking if this is not null, refresh token is not null. Then it means refresh token is what you want to check, because one instance should be created or should be called, or one property should have a value, and that's supposed to be null. Okay, so we say that if this is not equal to null, it means you want to check this refresh token. Check through this token info, and now check if refresh token is there. In case it is not, if it is not, return true. If it is not there, return false. By this, we can simplify this. So we can say return token is null. So if it's null, it is true. If it's not null, it is false. It's going to return this to the user. Okay, and I believe, okay. So we have this set. The next thing to do here is we are checking if it is not, refresh token is not, is empty, meaning access token is not empty. Then we're also going to check. So we're using else here, so that one runs at a time. Then we also get an uncheck access token is equal to this access token. Return this is null, meaning you're going to return true in case it is null. But in case it is not, then return false. So this is sitting on top of this get generate token. Now generate token here is also going to use this verify token to check it over there. Okay, so we have this verification token method created, and aside from that, we also have our verification, and that's a verify method in here. This is a verify method which is going to verify this. This is a generate tokens, going to generate the tokens and return. Calling this verification method to verify it, and now generate token here to pass in the number of bytes and now generate it. So with the 3 lines of code here, we can able to generate our token peacefully without conflicting or having the same token generated in a database. Yes, you don't do that. You know, maybe you're asking yourself, why don't you put everything in and one folder? Is it one folder, one method? Well, it's good that you create one definition of a method at a time. So here, generate token will have one method, verify will have one method, and maybe check have one method, etc. All right, so you can put them, you can be calling them all the time in one method. So do not put everything in one. It makes reading very difficult, and it must also be clean and also be easy to read as well. So once we have this, we have to save the token. Okay, so in order to save the token too, we have to check, is the token already saved? Is the user token or the user details have been saved already? Maybe the username, the old token or the new token that has been added, is it there already? Or the person, the first person logging into the application? So if so, then we want to check if the person has record already, update it. If the person doesn't have any record, then save to the new one. And that's what we need to do in here. So I'm going to call a method, and now this method is going to either save it or update it. I'll pass it down here, add or update the token info. And we are also calling a method known as save token, save to token info table. I'll pass in the ID of this, the token, and then the refresh token. This is coming from the token info. If I peep this token info in here, can I have any token info instant in here? Okay, so I'm not having it. Now, when you go to this Explorer, you go to the data folder. That's where you have the token info. You know, we have ID, user ID, access token, and a refresh token. Expiry date and uncreated date have their own default dates. So as soon as the token has been created, it's set an expiry date to 1. So that's 1 day. Aside from 1 day, you cannot have access to the token again. It has expired, and you cannot use this to make a query or do a whole lot of stuff inside this application. So now when we go back to this user account in here, we need to save this, provide the user ID, to provide the access token, now the refresh token. So we have all this specified, but I need to create this method. So here, save to token method is very simple, and we have to also define it in here. So maybe I can put it down here, so it can also sit on top of all. Now, if you check this, we are making a check, and it is accepting these parameters as a user ID, access token, and refresh token as the payload defines here. Now, we are getting from databases from the token info, and I'm checking if the user ID it is there. If user ID is null, it means the person is the new person, and then we can add a new one. So you can see we are populating it, user ID, token to token, refresh to refresh, and now we commit it. Remember, we have the commit method, right? But in case user ID is not null, then you know we are updating, because as soon as this get from the database, it has tracking on. So we can now get the ID, and I have all the necessary data or the response that we have. So we can now update it in here, and after that, we need to also commit it by saving it, and we want to update the date expiry date to 1. So anytime that we save or we create a token, the person logs in, and the token is being created, we want to increase, or we want to add expiry date of 1 day to the current date that person created. So if the person created it today, then it's going to add 1 day, meaning tomorrow the token must expire, right? So if the person doesn't use it, tomorrow if we try to use the token, and it says that's expired, unless we call a refresh token to generate a new token for that user. All right, so now we have this, basically we are going to call this token, this method inside our controller. So we need to create an endpoint for that. Let me just close this. So we have this method created, and that is what they are working. And you know, it's going to work. Trust me, it's going to work. Okay, so because I've tested it and it's working. So trust me, this is going to work. Let me just close all these empty spaces in here. And yes. Now let's go to the account controller. Okay, so now in here, we have to have our login. And it's the same thing as this. We can just make a copy of this, or we can put what we have, very simple one for the login. So we can just have it here. So the route here is a login. And you know this returning, this will return not a service response, rather it should be a login response. So for this login must be a login response, because that's what we are returning. So this must be login response. And now you can see we have this login model, and you're going to return a response in here. and I return OK with it. In case it is null, then return model is null. So we are checking. By all means, the mechanism that you've put in place, this cannot be passed on to this method why it has no value, because you're checking it inside the controller and also checking it inside the repository in here. You see, we're also checking it in here. The first line, we're also checking it. So 2 checks, hi. The security is very tight. You cannot pass in an empty model to the method. Okay, so now let's run this application again and now see our login section. So we have our app ready, and as I said earlier on, we are not working with the UI, so we need to go to the Swagger to have access to the API endpoint interface, and that is where we are now. So we're going to log in. Remember that we have registered already. So as soon as you log in, we must have a token generation from random number using the number of base or section of 1256 for the token itself, and 64 for the refresh token. Now let's see, and that's our access token. So try this out, and you know, we have the same thing, and at this time around, it is an administrator email. So click on execute, and now let's wait for the response. Good, so you can see we have it, flag is through. Now message here is login successful. This is our token, and we see we have our refresh token. Yes, so that is it. Now in the next video, we're going to talk about how do you consume this inside the Blazor application. So we can append this token to the header, and now we can restrict this. We can restrict our endpoint, so you cannot call an endpoint whereby you don't have a token attached to. You know, there are some default endpoint that we cannot protect it. Example is the get product. So get category, because when the app loads, it has to get a category to display the UI. Whether you are logged in, you're not logged in, you have to be able to see this. But only if you want to add category, that is our administrator issue. We have to provide category, we have to provide a token. If you want to make a payment, you have to add, you have to log in, you see? So with these 2 occasions, it means our authentication is very important to that. So what we're going to do here is, for all the get method, which is related to the product display, category display, we're not going to protect it. By the rest, post product should be by the administrator, and also this post category should be by the administrator. But when you get to the add to cart, if you want to retrieve cart items, we need your ID, isn't it? So you must have that. So maybe it's very useful, and it's going to be useful to that as well. Now I'm going to end here because you have almost about one hour past and some few minutes. So I don't want to keep this one, trying to make this short and simple as well, so that you can watch all the time. Okay. And I want to make it as stress-free too. So I'm going to leave here, and maybe in the next video, that's going to be the part 9. I'm going to talk about consuming this in an API, not in a Blazor WebAssembly, and calling all the stuffs, the magic stuffs in it to get the refresh token out there, the authorization and everything working as expected. Okay, so if you're okay with this, please then don't forget to like this video. You can also buy me coffee to support it, and I'll be very, very happy to receive it, and yeah, I'll enjoy it. Thank you in advance for doing that. I really appreciate those people who have been doing this, liking the video and do a whole lot of stuff to support this. Keep on. God bless you.